Every one of these productivity creators once identified as a chronic procrastinator. In fact, a study showed 85% of people admit to regularly procrastinating, including me. The difference between us and them is they recognize this infliction early and uncovered secrets to eliminate procrastination for good. And today, I'm going to uncover those secrets so you can defeat procrastination anytime it shows up in your life. But first, I want to ask you a question. Who do you think you could be if procrastination wasn't a part of your life? Growing up, I always believed I was going to become an actor. I had a huge fear of failing, which led me to completely neglect rehearsing my monologues. When I turned 18, I was lucky enough to get an audition at the Central School of Speech and Drama in London. On the day of the audition, I'd only rehearsed my lines the night before. Unsurprisingly, I didn't pass the audition. So this is what we mean when we talk about procrastination. It's the act of avoiding a task we know we should do, despite expecting our avoidance to bring negative consequences. The reason we do this can be explained with the Ostrich Effect. This is a phenomenon in psychology in which, when we are faced with negative information, we choose to ignore it, figuratively sticking our heads in the sand, hoping the issue will just go away by itself. However, we know all too well, when we procrastinate on a task, the anxiety and stress that comes with it only grows the longer we procrastinate on the task. When procrastination becomes a habit, it can begin to bleed into other areas of our lives, leading us to neglect our health and relationships. So how the hell do we stop procrastination taking over our lives? Well, to get some answers, I looked under the hood. When we procrastinate, there are generally three areas of the brain responsible. The prefrontal cortex, the home of rational thought. The amygdala is in control of your emotional responses to information. And the limbic system is your caveman brain, with the one goal of avoiding discomfort. Let's imagine you're brushing your teeth, and your prefrontal cortex thinks, oh, I should book a dentist appointment, and decides, I'll do that later. This gives it time to sink into your subconscious, evaluating the relevancy and highlighting all the negative information associated to it. What if it's painful? What if they remove my tooth? What if I look stupid? The amygdala picks up on this information and translates it into fear, stress, and anxiety. The limbic system rightly identifies these feelings as discomforting, so it instructs you to grab the nearest distraction to give you that temporary release of dopamine. If gone uninterrupted, this cycle can repeat itself, pushing the fear, stress, and anxiety to an unbearable amount, to the point where you're left frozen and immobile. Thankfully, we can break the cycle by working with our brain's natural responses. The one thing to take away here is we avoid discomfort. So the big secret is simply to disassociate the discomfort from the task. I've identified the 4 most common triggers for procrastination and how to remove discomfort from them. Maybe you've started a new role, taken on a larger client than usual, or tasked with something slightly above your current abilities. All of a sudden, you're overcome with feelings of self-doubt, incompetence, and fear of failure. These challenging tasks can cause a kind of imposter syndrome. The underlying issue here is that we have certain expectations of ourselves, and we don't believe that we can meet those expectations. Before I uploaded my first video, I was riddled with anxiety, self-doubt, and just feared that people would just laugh at me. And I spent months polishing my first video just for it to flop and be an objectively bad video. To remove this feeling of inadequacy, we need to shift our measure of success from performance to our capacity to learn and become a student. Your only goal as a student is to learn and improve. You are not expected to be an expert. No matter what the task, you will always learn something by trying, regardless of the outcome. In your new job role, you're not expected to know everything. So you'll ask questions and improve. If you don't satisfy your large client, you can identify what went wrong and improve your services. When you become a student, your only objective is to learn. No matter how you perform, you will always come away stronger. This is by far the most common reason we choose to avoid a task, and is likely responsible for all types of procrastination to some degree. The task just bores us to death. The key thing to do in this situation is make the task as attractive as possible. There's a few things we can do here. Step 1 is reduce friction. Remove all the effort it takes to start a task. We basically want to make it as easy as possible to just get started. Let's imagine you have an assignment to write an essay about something you're not particularly interested in. In this case, as soon as you get home, make a folder on your desktop and make sure all the resources are inside. So the act of starting is just one click away. Step 2, turn it into an adventure. Take your laptop to the park or a coffee shop and just change the environment to make the assignment feel more like a day out. Step 3, add pleasure. You can listen to your favorite music or a podcast. Personally, I like to add a piece of chocolate by my laptop, so I associate starting work with a treat. Step 4, remove distractions. Just don't bring your phone with you or anything that's going to distract you. And maybe just bring some earplugs so external distractions can't affect you either. Step 5, starve of the rat. This is a method I recently heard from Ryan Doris. Now you're in the park, you've removed the distractions, and the only thing in front of you is the Word doc. Now, before you start, stare at a tree for 5 to 10 minutes. What we're doing here is boring our brain. Our brain found boredom so uncomfortable, your brain will naturally find the assignment more attractive simply because it's more stimulating than staring at a wall for 10 minutes. There's plenty of other creative things that we can do. If you're avoiding a task because it's just too boring, ask yourself, how can I make this more attractive? Let me know what you come up with in the comments. This is actually the problem I have most frequently. Hey, get your mind out the gutter. When we identify a task as too big, it just seems overwhelming and complicated because we haven't gained clarity on the task itself. Usually because the task is pretty ambiguous, like fix car, learn Chinese, or grow 3 inches. For example, edit video is something that takes me around 20 to 40 hours to complete. I used to constantly put this off, and when I did eventually sit down to edit, I'd waste a bunch of time figuring out where to even start. The way to remove discomfort from big tasks like this is simply to break them down into smaller tasks. Since then, I've realized my editing workflow actually has 10 separate phases. So I listed these down, and all of a sudden, I was left with 10 tasks that took around 1 to 3 hours to complete each. This actually ended up speeding up my edits, as I'd accidentally set these mini deadlines for the individual phases. So if you think a task is too big, make a list, break it down, and take action. We sometimes avoid a task because there's just too much pain, stress, or fear associated to the task itself, such as planning a loved one's funeral or divorcing your partner. Now, tasks like these are never going to be easy by any means. And this is when the ostrich effect is at its strongest, hoping the problem will just go away on its own. However, the feelings only get harder to face the longer you ignore it. The best solution in this scenario is an exercise called Name the Feeling. This is when you grab a pen and paper and start journaling. The aim is to get to the root cause of why you're avoiding the task. This can be tough to do, but when we dig deep enough, we can identify the feeling, whether it's guilt, shame, sorrow, whatever it might be. When we name the feeling, this allows us to create some dissonance from the feeling and the task itself, hopefully removing that mental block so you can get started on the task. And often, deep down, we know relief from these feelings is usually on the other side of that task. Now, even though we're equipped with all of this information in our procrastination toolkit, this still doesn't address the biggest killer of productivity, managing our time. So to make sure you command every hour of your day, make sure you give this video a watch next.